you said something or told me about, I think you wrote it on the form of my guests. I have you guys fill out just like areas and topics and points that you like to make. And one of the things you wrote was simplicity is greater than decluttering, I think it was, or simplicity. Yeah, over organizing, just simplicity over organizing. And this made me think of, so like on social media, I remember one time seeing this thing where like they pulled open a sock drawer that had a bajillion pairs of socks. And then they took all the socks out and then they put this like MacGyver gadget in there that you pop in the sock drawer and it opens it up and has all these squares that then you can organize more of your socks. And I remember thinking like, oh, why don't you just have like 5 pairs of socks instead of 500, So I know that there's like closet organizers and people that will come in and make space for the things that you have. But and I want to ask you what that means, but in my mind read, it's like, it's one thing to have enough place and organization for all the stuff versus like just having less stuff. Cause it's cool that that's in a Tupperware in your garage or whatever that looks like in the container. But if you never use it, never see it, and it's just there, is that actually decluttering or is it just like putting something somewhere convenient? You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I would not say it's decluttering because, and I can define the two. Decluttering is the act of removing what is no longer serving you from your home. Organizing, and this is my definition, is making your clutter look pretty. Now, I guess I should say you can organize after you've decluttered if you really want to get into that, and you've simplified and you're like, I have what I need and now I want to make it look pretty. For some people, they like that, and I think that's fine. It's not my MO, but that's different. But if going into it, you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm drowning, I have so much stuff, organizing isn't going to be the first step. It's easier because all you have to do is just put the stuff in a bin and it goes away and it's like, okay, I'm done. But especially if you're a mom, what happens when little Johnny pulls the bin out and dumps it out on the floor, because that's what you do when you're two, and all the stuff is and you have to go pick up all of those things. Well, you didn't get rid of the junk, right? You just put it away. You made it look nice in the cute wicker basket, which I get it. It's fun. It's like, oh, this looks so cute. But you didn't eliminate the problem, right? The problem was that you're overwhelmed, you're tired, you don't want to clean up all day, right? And so you didn't solve that problem. You really just put a pretty Band-Aid over it. But when you can actually get rid of the things, get them out of your house, you have less to manage, less to worry about, less to stress over, and truly you have more peace because you can look around your house, and it's not going to be perfect, and we can talk about this, but it's not about having a perfect home, but it's about just making it easier to manage. I think we all want that because we know at the end of the day that we're going to have more time, more capacity, more mental space for what really matters. Because I don't think anybody would say, cleaning and managing my home is like at the top of my priority list.
Yeah, especially with the busy moms that you're working with regularly. And when you said make it look pretty, I was also thinking about your medicine cabinet analogy where it's like, it's great if it looks pretty, but if like 6 of the bottles of Tylenol behind the first one that's perfectly lined up are like expired or crusty or could be combined or whatever. I remember being at a friend's house asking for, I think, a Band-Aid, and then her being like, oh, the stuff is up there in those bins, and I like open it up and I'm like looking for it and I'm like, wait, this was expired in like 2019, this is empty, and I just started like getting, it's like, it's one thing if it looks pretty, but is it functional, and is it like actually serving you when you go to that container and like, I need something from this, can you actually find it? I know you work with a lot of moms. I'm not a mom, and I work with a lot of moms too in my life coaching business. And I often I say Lunden party of one. That's what I usually say as like a salute to mothers. Cause sometimes I'm just like, wow, superheroes in human form, right? Doing all the things for their kids, running their family. I know moms listening are like, yeah, I want to declutter and get rid of this stuff, but just as soon as I'm, decluttering over here, there's a mess over here. My husband comes in, throws his pile of stuff over here. Where do they start, and how do they find relief through decluttering without like doing the most?
Hmm. I would say same thing applies like what I shared earlier. Start with something that feels easy. And also depending on the age of your kids, because I know it can be hard, especially when they're little. My son's 11 months, so he's in the stage of pulling everything out, but I will say, and I hope this encourages you, I have still been able to, declutter a drawer. It's not a whole room. Remember, it might even be 5 minutes, especially if you have young kids who are, just going to probably make a mess. Because I've heard moms tell me, I can't do it when they're awake because they make a mess. And if that's, if it works better for you to do it when they're asleep, that's fine. But you could include them, make them a part of the process. I've had so many great stories from moms who have shared, I've modeled it, they've seen me do it. It's not an overnight thing, but my kids, and they're a little bit older, but they've watched me do it. And then all of a sudden, my daughter came and said, hey mom, can we declutter my room together? Or, hey, I want to give some of my toys to, kids who don't have them. And I want to, take care of my own things. And I think that's just such a testimony to you, modeling and teaching and showing them. So if you feel like, I just don't know when I'm going to make it happen with the kids here, include them. And, it may take some time, but even if it's, like I said, 5 or just 10 minutes, it's still progress. And I think we often, if you're like me, we're often hard on ourselves, and we can tell ourselves, like, 10 minutes, we're not going to get anything done, right? We need to have an hour. We need to have a whole day to do it. But you really can make progress in those just small chunks of time if you are mindful about, prioritizing them and making the time. And I think just knowing that it will be worth it.
Yeah, I relate to what you said about thinking something's going to take longer than it actually does. When it comes to cleaning and tidying up or organizing, I also have a pile of, you can't see it, but now you can, of all my clean laundry that I put on this table to then do in between calls. And while I know this will take me probably like a minute and a half to fold and put away, like it'll be super simple. There was still a part of me that was like, I can't do that right now. I need to prepare for this or whatever. But then I also know there's times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes and I'm just going to do whatever I can. And in my mind, I'm like, that's probably like unloading the dishwasher and I don't know, tidying up my bathroom. But in the end, 20 minutes is actually a lot longer when it's focused on that. Of course, if you're on your phone or like sidetracked, that's different. But I've always amazed myself with what I can do in like 20 minutes. And I think looking back on that and doing that regularly, I remind myself, like, Lunden, it's not going to take an hour. It's not going to take 2 hours. You can deep clean your whole 1 bedroom apartment in about an hour and a half. So to deal with like this corner, 20 minutes tops probably. And practicing that, like putting the reps in of like setting a timer and then like seeing what you can get done, for me has been motivating, because I'm like, oh, I thought I was only going to make a dent in the kitchen, but really I did the kitchen. I like took out the trashes. I, just like tidied up and got things a little bit more organized. So that really resonates with me, because sometimes we feel like it's something's going to take hours, but actually we spend hours freaking out about it or hours thinking about how we don't want to do it. How do you help people like push past that analysis paralysis?
Hmm. That's funny. I just recently posted some content about, I think it was a reel, about how we spend more time avoiding it than actually doing it, which is so true. Especially, I mean, I'm sure this could apply to so many things, but I see this happen a lot with decluttering because we know it needs to get done. And I always say, decluttering isn't the sexiest chore on the list. Like nobody wants, it's always like, I'll push that off, that can happen later. A lot of the time it just doesn't feel like something we want to do, especially if we're already tired, it's been a long day, what have you, because decluttering requires decision making, which means
Mm.
it's a process. It's something you have to think about, right? Especially, and maybe not the fridge. You still have to think, do I need this? But especially when you can get into things like your closet, baby clothes, things like that, where it may feel a little bit harder to let go of. So I would recommend just thinking through, you know, what is first on your list, and then what is most important, what is something that is maybe a pain point for you, and then I think knowing that you have just one thing to do instead of, your list of 10 things, because I know it can feel overwhelming when you can look at your whole house and think, where am I going to start? I have to do every room, especially when you are that overwhelmed. So pick that high priority space and then start there, and then you can move down your list.